Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. Today I'm joined by Spider-Man himself, Liam Carrigan. If you can't get the relation and the link, then where have you been over the last 48 hours or so? And we're here, Liam, we're here to talk about your favourite Celt, Dyson Maeda. He is the secret weapon. Without telling anybody, Celtic had appealed the 2-match suspension. That's been cut to 1. There is loads to discuss there. We'll take it right back to our earliest discussions about Dyson and the fact that you have been banging the drum that Dyson Maeda is a goal scorer. He's a striker. He's a centre forward. You've been saying it for a long, long time, Liam, and he's finally shown it. Prolific. 21 goals this season. How impressed have you been?
Well, I always knew he could do it. I mean, it's just I thought all along, when Kyogo left and all the headlines were, oh, we need to, Adam Ida needs to step up, Adam Ida needs to step up, and Ida will prove to be a good player for us in the fullness of time. I think he's coming good as well. But I thought, no, Dyson's the one that's going to step up and really do something here because he's got that platform now, and I always knew he had it in him. So it's really good to see.
There's been quite a lot of chat around the transfer window, which we're not going to get back into, but some of the criticisms that I've seen on the comment section, mainly kind of post-live, Liam, when I go through them at night on the YouTube channel. By the way, if you are watching on YouTube, give us a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Loads coming your way. We're going to feed you. We're going to drip feed you the developments of Acsom over the next few months. But let me tell you, it's going to be massive. It's going to be huge developments. But what I was getting was a sense that shut up about the transfers. The club did everything that they could, etc., etc., etc. And as a fan, though, Liam, I've got to say, I don't think that cuts the mustard. As a fan, when you look at the way the club's run, you look at the financials that we'll touch on at some point in the next 55 minutes. You think to yourself, you've got an entire department to get people in January. It does not cut the mustard with me when somebody says the club did all they could. I was reading a story yesterday that Balakwasha, who was a player we mentioned time and time again, centre forward with Royal Antwerp, Celtic were negotiating a £5 million transfer for that boy, but he was injured and didn't want to move whilst he was in recuperation. So I get that you can hit the post a few times, Liam, but I was of the sense near the end of the window, it was like, right, we're just going to have to run with what we've got. We were talking about a player in Johnny Kenny who had played 17 minutes, a player in Daniel Cummins who had played 11. And we were thinking, we really are putting ourselves at risk here. Someone needs to step up. And that man was the bold Dyson. But at the same time, both of these things can happen simultaneously. You can be frustrated with the fact we didn't bring in a centre forward, but also rejoice in the fact that both Maeda and Ida have stepped up.
Yeah, aye. It's, I mean, it like you say, it's an unfortunate set of circumstances, but these are the sort of situations where, a platform is created for players to make a name for themselves and become legends. And, Dyson's well on the way to being a legend, I think. And Ida will too in the fullness of time. But I really think it's just such a good time right now to be a Celtic fan. And it's amazing. I talk a lot about narratives on this show and how quickly the narrative shifts. And all it takes is one weekend of 2 good results to completely shift how everybody's talking about Scottish football. And it's amazing.
You cannot underestimate momentum, Liam. You cannot underestimate momentum. And it can work both ways insofar as that momentum gets you through games that otherwise you wouldn't get through, gets you wins that you wouldn't get. But on the flip side, it works in a completely different way. It detracts from that mental energy, the positivity, the belief system that you have, that you can get victories and you can get over the line. And we are in that rich vein of positive momentum right now. Our main challengers, as we continue to call them, are on the other side of the spectrum. Now, what's your spidey senses telling you about tomorrow night? We're always going to be looking through the team. We'll come back to Dyson because you said there he's on his way to becoming a legend. It's interesting, up until recently, we called him a cult legend. What's changed for you, Liam? Is it the Brendan Rodgers effect? What has actually changed? We were massive fans of Ange, but Maeda's better under Brendan.
we talked about this on the show a few months ago, and I said, and not everybody agreed with me, but I think it was a good discussion at the time. We were talking about the possibility of Kyogo going at that time, and I says that my opinion was Kyogo is the most naturally gifted of the three Japanese players we had at the time, but I felt that Daisen was the most useful in this team. And I think that is what really shows now is that Daisen is a much better player for this team. Kyogo and Hatate both maybe have more natural footballing ability than Daisen. But in terms of what he brings to this team and his role within this squad, Daisen is indispensable. Absolutely first name on the team sheet for me now.
It's incredible. Again, you're talking about narratives. It's incredible how that narrative has changed. I even remember people looking at his body language when Brendan came in. Oh, Daisen's no happy. He's not celebrating goals like he used to and all this nonsense. By the way, I think a lot of fans are right about Kyogo in that respect. But Daisen made a, not just on the park, but there's wee things that we've discussed privately. The fact that he's making more of an effort to discuss the games in English afterwards. He's got the kids getting in. He's always had the kids on the park and all the rest of it. But there's a sense, if you're looking into it to that degree, there's a sense this fella's happy. Yes, we've lost 4 of his countrymen over the last couple of seasons, right, who were obviously part of that Japanese contingent that we had at Celtic. But he seems as happy as ever, Liam. Now, again, we do look into all these kind of things, the nuances of Celtic and behaviours and body language and all that. I hope, because continuing the way that he is at the moment, he's one of the guys that the vultures will be circling Celtic Park for eventually. And I take absolutely no joy in saying that, right? But making him happy. Kyogo wasn't happy, Liam. He wasn't happy at Celtic. And that's quite sad from me as a fan. That's quite sad to hear. But Daisen seems to be very happy at the moment.
Yeah, and he is, from what I know of him from his time in over here in Nagano. He's always been very big on family. That's always been his priority. And if his family are happy, he's happy. And it looks like his family are absolutely delighted with life in Glasgow right now. So, I don't think. Put it this way: if Daisen leaves at some point in the future, I don't think it's going to be for the same reasons Kyogo left. I don't think it'll be, because he wants to play with a different team or whatever. It will be because he's ready to go back to Japan. I think he's with us for a few years, hopefully.
I hope you're right, and you can never underestimate the happiness of your family, the unit that you bring over to this country. As football fans, I'm as guilty as anybody. You think about footballers, Liam, they're just chess pieces in a game. They're commodities, they're assets, etc. And I brought this up yesterday when talking about Mike Nawrocki, who's been fairly lambasted, much maligned, actually. I'm not sure if he's misunderstood, but Mike Nawrocki is one of these guys, and you think to yourself, day to day, what is your existence like? And the response to that's always, well, look at his bank balance, he'll be fine. It doesn't really work like that. And the one example I always go back to, and again, going back to this narrative that you speak about, you speak to a lot of Celtic fans about George Cadet. I mean, we did an event with him back in 2023, around about Halloween time. And a lot of people contacted me. What are you allowing this, mercenary to come to Glasgow and all the rest of it and get paid to do a gig for Celtic fans? And the other half still looked at him as a kind of legend, And what had happened was I had the opportunity some time ago to speak to Jock Brown about the Cadet situation. And Wim Jansen was absolutely, determined to match Cadet and Larsson together. That was his vision. He eventually got Larsson and Darren Jackson, but that's another story. He wanted Cadet and Larsson, and that was his front two. And Jock Brown actually travelled over to Portugal to try and talk Cadet into coming back to Celtic. Now, there'll be Celtic fans out there going, if you need to talk him into it, then he's, leave him where he is. Let him go to Celta Vigo or wherever he went. And I get it. I totally do get that. But it wasn't his decision. And this is what Jock Brown reiterated when I spoke to him. And he had gone over to this villa in Portugal, and there's George Cadet, and he's in there with his then partner. And Brown said there was a really bad vibe in the room until his partner left the room. So it was as if she was the boss in this relationship. And Cadet broke down and he was crying and he was saying, I want to come back and I feel wanted and this and that. And Fergus McCann had made promises that he never kept, but they were able to come to a compromise in this meeting. And George Cadet agreed, and he agreed to come back to Glasgow and work with Wim Jansen, right? So this was the pre-season, obviously, where we were trying to stop the 10. And Jock Brown jumps on the flight, and away he goes. I forget who he was with. I would need to listen to the interview again. And obviously the phones go off in the plane, Liam. By the time he lands at Glasgow Airport, there's a voice note from Cadet, who's obviously then been spoken to as soon as the two Celtic representatives have left the villa by his then partner. And he's in tears on the voice note saying, I can't come back. I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed to come back. And there's been so many examples of this, Liam, where it is your family, it is your partner who says, yeah, I'm not happy in Scotland. I'm not happy with the conditions, whatever it is. And that's why I bring up the Maida thing. He's happy. He's got the family unit there. The kids seem happy. That is pivotal, isn't it?
Yeah. I just want to raise a point, actually. Somebody mentioned it in the comments there about Dyson having a young family, and would the kids reaching school age affect his decisions to maybe go back to Japan? I would actually say the opposite, because I think it would make him more likely to stay in Scotland for longer, because he's going to want his kids to learn English. And having worked in the Japanese education system for almost 20 years, unfortunately, I have to say the best way to learn English is to go to a school outside of Japan. So he would probably want his kids to spend their educational time in an English-speaking country if possible, because they'll get Japanese from mum and dad at home, and they can get English from school. That's what most of my students previously told me. Their families told me if they had the money, they would send their kids to school in an English-speaking country so they could pick up English more easily.
It's interesting. Very interesting indeed. Now, one feature of the All Singing, All Dancing, New Look, A Celtic State of Mind Daily Bulletin will be more of an onus on the comments and getting the interaction and the engagement from all the people that tune in on a daily basis. And currently, we've got 1,200 tuning in on this Tuesday afternoon to listen to myself and Liam talk about everything from Spider-Man to George Cadet's wife. Anything in between, we'll chat about it. As long as there's some kind of tenuous Celtic link, we will chat about it. So thanks, everybody, for your support. We continue to, I hope, develop and progress, and we will drip feed the information in relation to the big changes around about Acsom. You will still be able to tune in at 12:30 every single day and get all your regular faces and voices. Love them or loathe them, because no, everybody's favourite, and that goes for the presenter, myself. Ridiculizer, you're in. Campaign for Dyson Made a Song. Why not? Yeah. Subjects and suggestions are welcome on the socials and also in the comments section. We've also got Magnet67, a regular in the chat on the YouTube. Shout out to the Basra Rastonino CSC. Well, why not Tony Ralston? For me, much underrated member of the Celtic squad. And he got another brilliant, he got a brilliant assist, actually, which was somehow compared to something that was overhit by the commentary team, which I just found bizarre. It was a brilliant pass. Why can't you just call it as it was? James Kirwan, great bit of news. Full strength front three for Wednesday. Can't get any better for us. Now, on that note, James, Brendan, after the game against Raith Rovers, Liam was speaking to the one and only Charlie Mulgrew, the gloriously haired Mulgrew. I mean, that is some instalment of a fosh that the big man is sporting. Now the manager of Celtic Hearts, of course. I did offer him my Fife translators services, Liam, but he knocked him back. I think he's just going to muddle his way through up in Celtic. Right, and Brendan Rodgers was asked the question around the effectiveness of Maeda and the fact he would be missing tomorrow night. But 24 hours is a long time in football, and Maeda's not going to be missing. But Brendan actually did say, Jota will play there. So, this is changing the plan in a good way. Who is the front three for you? Because can I throw something out there, right? Up until recently, Kuhn's the best player in a Celtic jersey this season, right? Up until recently. Last few weeks, he's not been. Jota's come in. We go back to that momentum thing again, Liam. Jota's got that momentum, isn't he? He's got the momentum going. Who's your front three?
Well, Jota's still not 100%, I don't think. He's getting there, but he's maybe not quite up to a full game in Europe yet. So, excuse me. Sorry. I would start with Kuhn on the right. I'd start with Ida through the middle and Dyson on the left. But what you do is, we know Brendan likes to make these changes about an hour into the game.
Yeah.
I would bring Jota on, take Ida off at that point, and put Dyson through the middle for the last half an hour.
Oh, I like it.
I think
Yeah.
that's the way to do it.
And then you've got
But
a
we need to be
situation.
careful though, because I mean, Bayern Munich, they're no Queen's Park, but they are a good team, so we've got to watch it.
Not quite the Queens. Oh, that was glorious. And I'm sure we'll touch on it again before the day's out. The underwater cabbage salesman. Hail, hail, Tuesday Tims. Indeed. Hail, hail to you as well. We're here every Tuesday and we'll continue to be here every Tuesday. But we'll be even more singing and dancing very, very soon. We've also got Ridiculizer coming back in on the YouTube. Anthony Ralston is the greatest crosser of the ball we have. Never gets his due. Even the commentator said his ball to Yang was an overhit cross meant for the middle. He did, Liam. And you know what, right? That particular commentator, I think, when he came on the scene, there was a freshness about him. I thought to myself, he's good. By the way, I thought the same about Stephen Thompson. But in time, what you find is that they almost level out and they become the template that the broadcaster wants them to be. And they become bland and they come away with takes like that Ridiculizers just highlighted there. And you're sitting watching these games thinking, you used to be good. What happened to you? And I'm talking about the commentary, the commentator, not Tony Ralston or Yang. So let's focus on Yang then, because he's been brought up. And obviously, he got a couple of assists and a goal. Brilliant for his confidence. Absolutely tremendous for his confidence, Liam. Does it change a view? It changed quite a few people's views in the comment section at the weekend.
I think it shows to me that he's a valuable part of the squad. The fact that he can come in for a domestic game and do that shows that he has something to offer. But at the moment, it's no more than that. He's not displacing Jota. He's definitely not displacing Dyson. And, he's not going to displace Kuhn on the other side either. So he's a good attribute to have in the squad. He's dependable enough at domestic level, I think, that we can have him as a backup. But that's, at the moment, as far as I go with him. And I want Yang to succeed. I believe there is a player in there. But I think at the moment, he needs to, he still needs to up his game a bit to be seriously challenging for a first team place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that, without a doubt. Let's get more of your comments in before we talk about the challenge we face tomorrow night, the predicted 11 of both Liam and myself, the financials that have just been released as well from Celtic, and the most under, the radar, low-key announcement of a player signing for Celtic ever. Kieran Tierney got a wee mention in the financials. That's the way to do it. Never mind the socials. We'll just drop into the financial statement. There we go. Magnet 67, always a pleasure to see you. Apart from Jamesy, we have a full squad, I believe. Yes, we absolutely do. Keith Oakden, always a pleasure to see you coming in from Plymouth. Great news about Dyson. Absolutely. And Chill Pill, how do we stop Harry Kane? Well, I think it's pretty simple how we stop Harry Kane. There is only one way to stop Harry Kane, and it's this man right here. It's Leo Scalacci. You've seen him, what he did for Ireland, Liam. That's how you stop Harry Kane.
I mean, as an English teacher, I'd say the best way to stop Harry Kane is to try and engage him in a conversation.
Yeah. Harry Kane, this is the thing, Liam, right? You know how, as football fans, you take a liking or a disliking to certain players. And sometimes you can barely explain it. And it's got nothing to do with the way he speaks. But I've never liked him. I've just never liked Harry Kane. And you look at his record and you go, wow, it's incredible at club level and at international level. But I've just never, even like the likes of Wayne Rooney, if you're talking about English strikers, right? Obviously his kind of life off the pitch is questionable. But as a player, I just loved the guy. I thought it was tremendous. You take a liking to certain players and not to others. And Kane is just one of the guys that I just think he's a bit meh,
Do I think that's the thing with Harry Kane, right? See, when you look at English football over the last, 30 years or whatever, right? But with a particular emphasis on the England team, just to talk about them for a second. Characters are the ones that stand out. We think about, as much as they played for them, Gaza is a phenomenal talent, right? We think about guys like Wayne Rooney. We think about, the big characters. And to me, Harry Kane's a superb footballer, but he just doesn't seem to have any of that personality.
That's a
And
great
that's
point.
what's missing.
It's a great
People
point.
like a maverick, an unpredictable sort of a spark. And Kane isn't that. He's an effective, powerful, big striker, but that's all he is, really.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head, and that's why we love cult icons, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Kane's record just this season: 6 goals in 7 Champions League games, 21 Bundesliga goals in 19 games. Overall, he scored 28 and 28 for Bayern Munich, the team we'll be facing tomorrow night. I'm trying to think whether he's ever played at Celtic Park. I can't think that he has. Has he come to Celtic Park? I don't think so.
I don't recall us playing Spurs in any pre-season games
No.
or anything, so I don't think so. No.
No, this will be his first time at Celtic. I'm looking at some of his previous clubs and nothing's jumping out at me. So you look at his overall senior football record, 379 goals in 587 games. It is astonishing. And then he does it at international level as well. 69 goals in 103 games. Unbelievable challenge tomorrow night, Liam. And yeah, all joking aside, I know Scalesy gave him a dullion, as we call it, when he faced them for Ireland and they got sent off. But we line up with Carter Vickers and Austin Trusty tomorrow night against world-class opposition, regardless of whether or not I like them. World-class opposition, right? And it's like, right, we love CCV. I think Trusty still got a wee bit of progression to go, a bit of development to go. But that still is our strongest central defensive partnership by a distance, in my view. As much as I love Scalesy, and I do, and to see him getting the armband and all that from Callum McGregor, I'm just like, brilliant. He's got Champions League man of the match performances and all that. But when you're picking your team, I look at the 2 American boys. I look at CCV and Trusty. How will they fare tomorrow night, though, against world-class opposition?
Ultimately, this is why we play in the Champions League. This is the sort of test that we want. This is where we'll find out how far we have actually come and how far we still have to go. And whatever happens, just I'm proud of the team just for being at this level. I'm not saying, just be grateful we're here, because that's not how you should approach these kind of games. I think we should go at them and we have a chance to do something. I think we do have a chance. But like I said, this is as good as it gets. We're playing against one of the favourites to win the tournament. Were it not for the curse of Harry Kane, I would probably have a fiver on them to win the tournament. But he always seems to somehow manage to avoid winning trophies, despite being in some really good teams. But no, I really do think that they are. I mean, they're top of the Bundesliga, which for me is technically the best league in the world at the moment.
Well, the thing is, you talk about narratives. Everybody would have you believe English football's the greatest, but I agree with you. I think
it's
English
the best
football
marketed. It's not the best in terms of football and standard.
Absolutely agree with you. I always speak about like WWF wrestling. The box office nature of that, and it was just fake and phony and plastic. For me, English football's a bit like that. They make it look great. I mean, whoever markets it, phenomenal, well done, great job. But I agree with you. I think there are technically better leagues out there, and we are facing a team who are sitting perched pretty on top of that particular division tomorrow night. How do you face them? You're right. As a footballer, you're looking at that going, bring it on. You think about, and I'm not comparing any of our 2 centre-halves to this player, but you think about when, that great Ireland team faced the likes of Italy, and you've got Paul McGrath, who's got like 1.5 knees that work, and, he's unfit and he can only train on a Tuesday, and it's a slight run that he does and all that, and he turns up. He shows up and he marks Roberto Baggio out the game. And at that time, Italian football with the Serie A and everything else was at the top of the tree, Liam. So it doesn't always work like that. That I think that's what I'm saying. We've got to face it in such a respect that bring it on. We're here
that
on,
Ireland game
on merit.
particularly. That Ireland game you mentioned. That is the classic sort of puncher's chance, I think is what you call it. You've always got that when you've got good players in your team. You've always got a chance of landing a blow on even the best team in the world. And many people would say Italy were the best team in the world at that time. They went right through the final, only lost on penalties. And Baggio was probably the best individual player on the planet at the time. But Ireland still beat them. And, Celtic are going into tomorrow's game, I think, in a very similar position. We're up against world-class opposition. We are the heavy underdogs, but we've got the players that, with the right combination, mix of luck and giving absolute 100%, we have that puncher's chance.
There was a pundit's take on the famous game that AR, I think, is referencing here, arachnophobia. Well, we don't have arachnophobia in here, but there are certain other teams. If there's such a thing as a Rangers state of mind, it will be called Acsom, and they might have arachnophobia, but I don't tune into Rangers podcasts. Although...
You need to have a mind in order to be in a state, so I don't think so.
You're spot on. Great movie, though. 1990 film. Arachnophobia, I remember it well. And Jeff Daniels, who was kind of famed for Dumb and Dumber, one of my wee boy's favourite movies. But also John Goodman of Big Lebowski fame was in that film as well. So big shout out to any of that kind of era. But on a more serious note, got word this morning from a friend of Acsom, Paul Bunn, that he had suffered a near fatal heart attack in Dublin. God. And it was due to the quick thinking of someone within the Dublin Boozer that he was in at the time, who was able to administer CPR and bring him back to life. He was gone for a spell, but he's back. And you'll remember Paul Bunn being a signing during Liam Brady's time at the football club. He enjoyed his best run of form under Tommy Burns, scoring twice against Rangers. A couple of wee things I'm going to throw in here, Liam, because that's like my era. That's me, saving up paper, round money to pay for my Celtic supporters bus through to watch these games. And Burnsy was one of the guys who very, very nearly made it to the USA in 1994. Ireland had, the long squad, if you like, the long list, and they had a big team group. And you look at that team group and it's like Tommy Coyne was in it, John Aldridge, phenomenal team Jack Charlton had assembled. Paul Bunn was in there. Bunn was something of a kind of child prodigy, if you like, and he came over to English football and he made his debut for Oxford United at 16 years of age, right? And that was an Oxford team that had the aforementioned Aldridge and Ray Houghton in it. So, there was a proper Republic of Ireland contingent in that team, right? So he makes his debut for them and he gets a big move to Arsenal, Liam. He was only, I think, 18 maybe, and he goes to Arsenal. He's playing for the Arsenal reserves and he's basically kicking his heels, not getting a game. But at that age, you think he should be getting a game, even though you've got guys probably like Kevin Campbell and, Alan Smith and all these guys playing for the first team. So he leaves, he goes back to Ireland, becomes something of a legend over there, gets another chance at Celtic. And I always remember Liam Brady saying that he had moved Paul Bunn into his house wherever Brady lived because he had to get Paul to lose some weight because he had a McDonald's diet where he was just buying burgers and chips. So Liam obviously gave him the Italian treatment, and he gave him the pasta and all this kind of stuff. Got him fit, and he was a very effective player for Tommy. But there's two things I want to share with you. The first one, I remember reading it, and I'm not sure whose book it was in, but Tommy Burns was very close to throwing Paul Bunn into the 1995 Scottish Cup final. He'd lost his place in the team. He'd featured in the Coca-Cola Cup earlier on in that season, but he'd lost his place in the team. But he thought about throwing him in because Burns had this belief that sometimes you can do that and it works in your favour because the guy's not worried, there's no nerves, there's no anxieties, and your opposition isn't expecting it. So he was going to throw Burnsy in. He didn't get it. Didn't get the start that he would have loved. But he came over. And he came over to play in the Acsom select team. We got the Celtic select team to play St Rocks for the testimonial, the centenary. And Paul Bunn came over. He came over the night before, right? So I've gone through to Glasgow and picked him up. And we're having a chat, talking about the goals at Ibrox and all that kind of stuff, as you do, Liam, Yeah. And eventually we go through to this wee hotel where he spends the night with Saul Davis from James. And these are the bizarre things that happen to you, Liam, when you're a member of Acsom. So you've got the James guitarist, right? One of my favourite bands, and Paul Bunn, because both of them played in the game. And now the following day, we go to the Rock, we go to the game, and obviously, as you know, and it still seems a bit bizarre, Brendan Rodgers turns up at halftime to manage the team. So after the game, Brendan Rodgers is standing chatting. I'm standing chatting with Paul Byrne because Burns missed his taxi up to Glasgow, right? There was an after event, if you like, up in Glasgow at Don Max, and Burns missed his taxi. So he's come back into the wee clubhouse to wait for his taxi. Brendan Rodgers is leaving the building, and I'm chatting to Paul, and Brendan Rodgers comes right up to us. And he's like, that man there, that goal at Ibrox, I'll never forget it. And he starts waxing lyrical about Paul Byrne. And Byrne was like, starstruck that Rodgers had remembered. Of course he remembered. And I'll never forget, he says to me as he's walking out the building, Liam, right? He says to Paul first, he goes, I've never seen you up at Celtic Park since during my 2 times at the club. Why is that? And Paul says, look, I played with a team that never really won anything, and I don't really feel part of it. He goes, well, if you ever want to come to a game, you'll be my guest. Just give Paul John a phone, and he'll sort it out. He says, and with that, Brendan Rodgers leaves and disappears in the night, and I'm getting phone calls for months later. I have to sort it out. Oh, no problem. I've got a red button to Brendan's office right enough at Lennoxtown, which obviously I don't. But there you go, Burnsy. Get well soon, mate. And hopefully we'll see you at an Acsom event at some point in the future. But another reminder, Liam, once you get to this age, it's like, anything can happen. Look after yourself, look after your health and everything else, because you never know what's in the corner, guys.
Exactly.
You and Boy Martin, forget about Kyogo's first season. And to be honest, was he really so special? On current form, Maeda has blown him away. I'm going to throw this over to you, Liam. You watched both players before they came to Celtic. What do you make of that? Is this kind of like recency bias, do you think?
A wee bit. I mean, I get the sentiment, right? I know that there is this idea amongst a lot of fans that once a player leaves the club, you wish him well, but he's no longer a concern as far as you're thinking. But no, I don't think that's very fair to Kyogo. Kyogo had great moments for us throughout his time at Celtic, and we should be grateful for those. And I certainly don't wish the wee man any ill will at all. I think, as I said, in this team, as it's shaping up now, under this manager, Maeda's the more effective player. But it doesn't take away from the fact that Kyogo is a phenomenal footballer. And I really hope he is successful in France, even if I do personally think going there's a mistake.
I'm just going to ask you that, if you thought it was a mistake. I'm the same. I wish him all the best. And if it was an international decision, then hopefully he gets what he's left for, because what he had here was adoration. He had the opportunity, I would say, to become a legend. Others might say he is a legend. I think it's one of the things that almost feels like unfinished business with Kyogo. And he's at that age that it never will be finished now. So it's something of a regret for me. But I also understand guys like Big Ewan, perhaps, but certainly Lawrence Conley of Acsom, who the minute you leave Celtic Park, that's it, it's gone. I don't feel like that. I still have an adoration or an admiration for players who have left the football club, for example. I think what it is sometimes is if it's a player's decision, Liam. I get that. Aye. You almost feel like scorned if the player wants to leave Celtic, and you're thinking, why would you want to leave Celtic? Jota didn't want to leave Celtic. He didn't really have an option when you dangle that carrot in front of a player. Although, for me, when you're looking at that, it's a cautionary tale of what happened to Jota's career. It's not all about money. Patrick Docherty, welcome to the show. You're on the YouTube. Give us a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Yesterday, we got almost 500 likes. It does something to the algorithm. Liam, don't ask me what, but it does something to the algorithm and it helps us out if you give us a big thumbs up. Fantastic news. A touch of gold. Midas Maeda will play against Bayern Munich. Oh, that's Alan McInally's burner account. Not only will Maeda return for the home game, the fans are getting to go to the away game, Liam. How delighted were you when you heard that?
Great. It's fantastic because the other great thing about German football is they know how to treat fans properly as well. So anyone who is going over to Munich, absolutely world-class stadium, fantastic local fans, great facilities. You'll have a great time regardless of the result. Really, they. I know that a lot of Celtic fans have a soft spot for teams like St. Pauli, like Dortmund, whatever. I've always had a liking for Bayern Munich, and it's there was a really good documentary I saw a while ago about and it had the most inflammatory title ever, right? It was on YouTube, and it was Why Hitler Hated Bayern Munich, and it basically talks about
Good start.
how he went on a mission to try and destroy Bayern Munich during the war years because they wouldn't play along with his nonsense.
Did not know that.
And it's like, for example, Bayern were the only club in Germany who were actually forced to wear the that emblem, which I won't mention, hence unless we get demonetized. He was they were the only team that were actually forced to change their badge to Hitler's liking.
You know this, Liam, every day is a school day. I love that kind. And there's going to be people in the comment section perhaps saying, why don't you know this? I did not realise that at all. So there's a documentary out there. I'm going to check that out without a doubt. That's the kind of stuff that I love. I love the history of football clubs, because I think you can, as you say, have an affinity with a club based on their principles. And, in many ways, I think that's where the kind of the loving, which I know is no longer there, but the loving between Celtic and St. Pauli started. It was the kind of origins. It was the fact that this was a working class club who were kind of anti-establishment. Back then, this is how it started, of course. And, you had all these people who were, punks and teddy boys, and they didn't belong to the, if you like, to the mainstream, Liam, but they gravitated towards this football club called St. Pauli. And it was a fan who went to one of the flea markets at the time in Hamburg and picked up the skull and crossbones, took it to the game. It became their emblem. And then it developed from there. And then you had the ultra movement, which developed very organically from, that. And it was like people from the slums. There was a lot of people who were squatting in Hamburg at the time and all that. And, they were basically the trash of the city. And they've gone for this wee football club called St. Pauli, whereas the establishment club was Hamburg and all that. So I could understand why Celtic fans and St. Pauli fans at that time, there was that kind of gravitation towards that. And obviously we felt at the time they were a very political club. They were punks. They were politically minded. But there's been a fragmentation of that over Israel-Palestine. But yeah, I think you can get that affinity with a football club based on their origin story, or if they're faced with someone like Hitler or Mussolini and they fight back. So thanks for sharing that. But it has reminded me of a documentary that I was involved in. We got recommended from a friend of ours down in Liverpool because he had worked with a German documentary film maker who was coming over to Glasgow to create it was a part of a series of shorts, if you like, called Die Derbies, DIE, and he wanted to cover the Glasgow Derby, as you do. So around about that time, Ollie Seisler, who's the director of the movie, of the documentary, he came over and he came to our Paddy McCourt gig at Gracie's, and he filmed quite a bit of that, and he filmed an interview with me inside. The thing with this is you kind of put yourself up and you trust the makers of the film, Liam, because they can pick and choose what they use and all that kind of stuff. And I've gone into basically why I'll never refer to the derby as the Old Firm derby, because I think you've always got to remind people of their history when it comes to this. And the longer it goes on, Liam, the more people are inclined to forget just what happened back in 2012. So, we spoke all about that. Go and check it out if you can find it. Someone recently in Germany at my wife's work said, you'll never believe this, we were in the hotel and your husband popped up on the screen. So it was shown on national television over there. My big mug on the screen. But we were talking about, and it was just on the eve of the 3-3 game last season, when the big man Ida scored and you thought it was the winner. But I do want to talk about Adam Ida because it's his birthday today. Now, if you weren't feeling old already, Liam, and I'm not saying you do, right? When Adam Ida was born, here we go, mate. When Adam Ida was born, Atomic Kitten were number 1 in the UK charts with Whole Again. God almighty, I remember hearing that song at my work. Right.
Yep.
Number 2, Wheatus with Teenage Dirtbag, which was on rotation on MTV at the time. Then number 3, Papa Roach with Last Resort. Number 4, Limp Bizkit were in there as well. And then Top Loader, number 8, Dancing in the Moonlight. This no way is this Adam Eder being born when Dancing in the Moonlight was in the top 10. And U2, Stuck in the Moment you can't get out of. Do you feel old yet? That was the day.
That is like the soundtrack to like the last couple of years of my high school life. That
Exactly.
is weird.
Aye. Well, that was the day Adam Eder was born, which makes me feel even older than I already did. God. So the big man, yeah, I think there's a huge onus on him. And you know, we talk about narratives; it's a word you throw about, but the narrative up until recently was that he was a waste of money. And look at him now. Big part of that was he didn't really have an option, did he? He had to basically put his big boy pants on and start scoring goals. There was a moment in the young boys game where he didn't score the goal, but he forced the own goal. And I just think it was a pivotal moment in his season, Liam. And I think he's going to be huge for us tomorrow night.
I really, you know, they talk about adversity being a time for heroes to emerge, you know, and he and Maeda both have stepped up since Kyogo left. And they've both shown it. Like you say, you know, his moment was the young boys game where, you know, I'm crediting Ida with that goal. He basically made it happen, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, that's his goal. He's the one who makes the goal happen, even if he's not credited with it. So that's his moment to emerge as the hero, because you know that's why we're playing Bayern tomorrow night, because we beat Young Boys. That's the fact of the matter. So he's had his moment. Since then, Maeda has also had several moments, and they both are in a very good place right now with the support and with the, you know, with their position in the team in general. I think to really go out and do something special. The more I talk about it, the more optimistic I'm getting about this game. I really think something might happen.
Oh, I like that. I do like it, because sometimes, right, you look at a situation or a number of events that lead up to the game, Liam, and they only become kind of pivotal or important to the wider story of it after the event. And you think to yourself, all right, okay, we've got a nice boost. The fans are going over to Germany. Brilliant. Then we got this Maeda thing. Someone in the comments says we shouldn't have announced it until an hour before kickoff. Just announce the team.
And that would have been brilliant. That would have been absolutely brilliant.
Maeda's in it. There's a part of me, Liam, I just like yesterday, the media team, the social team at Celtic were like, what else could we throw out there just to sicken them even more? There's the financials. Kieran Tierney's in there somewhere. There's Maeda playing tomorrow night. Anything else we can throw at them? So yeah, someday for the social team, and someday for our very own Quinny. Can I just give a big shout out to Quinny, right? I think Quinny's tremendous. I actually I watch his own channel on YouTube as well. I watched it on the transfer deadline night. He was fantastic. What I loved about it, he got suited up with a tie and all the rest of it for transfer deadline. Brilliant. And he streamed it. Well, Quinny was doing in London yesterday. Now, this wasn't like a blanket invite for loads of Celtic channels or loads of Celtic individuals. Quinny, through his work at Seltzer here, was invited down by the Overlap, right? Which probably is the biggest football channel on YouTube at the moment, I would suggest. I mean, they get like 1 million plus for an episode and all that kind of stuff. They've obviously got big backers and big profiles on there. But he was down there yesterday with Carragher and Scholes, speaking about Celtic, speaking about Queen's Park, and talking about Bayern Munich and all that kind of stuff. So massive shout out to Quinny. Well done. And hopefully you'll still come and speak to us as well, now that you're kind of like in the prawn sandwich brigade, Quinny, if you're tuning in. Here we go. AGSC Tech, you're in. The biggest misunderstanding about the Germans from the UK is that it's middle class. Wrong. Germany is a profoundly working class country with apprenticeships in every part of the economy. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's great. You know, I did the whole thing. I got right into the ultra movement, not as an ultra, just into the whole psychology behind it, Liam. And it was my intention years ago, over a decade ago, to write a book on it, because I seen the Green Brigade, who are about almost 20 years old, and I've seen a huge influence from the German ultra movement, and in particular the St. Pauli guys, to the point where, come on you boys in green, "Come on, you boys in brown" was the original chant. Glasgow's green and white was Hamburg's brown and white. Even the skull, that came from the.
Yeah.
I'm guessing from the Tatenkampf, I think it is. My German wasn't great, and I did fail it at high school. So all that kind of stuff. There was a lot of lineage, if you like, between and parallels between the Green Brigade and the Ultras. So, I went over to Germany. I went as far as going over there and got friendly with a couple of St. Pauli fans. I'm not going to say Ultras, but they knew the Ultras and all the rest of it. They kind of they were on the periphery. So I loved all that, and it's a shame. It really is a shame that they no longer exist. But the Ultras have been a big discussion point, Liam, and I've made my feelings known about this. Even if the club don't like some of the stuff that they do, I think what the club need to realise is that, and we can probably tie this into the situation at Ibrox at the moment, there's generations, right? So you ask yourself at the moment, and every football club will need to wrestle with this, if they aren't already, they should be. What are they going to do to attract and retain the next generation of football fans, right? Because back in my day, it was like, your dad, your cousins, your uncles, and all their friends all went to watch Celtic. So it was just always there. It was omnipresent, right? And you then, by a knock-on effect, you are born into it. By the very essence of that, you're born into it, and then you start going, right? And there's nothing sexy about it back then. Absolutely nothing sexy about it at all. I mean, the stadiums were rubbish. My old fella used to come back reeking of cigarette fumes and everything else that happened in the jungle. And, so there was nothing sexy about it, but you wanted to go. Fast forward to now. Why would the generation of today, the generation who, in terms of technology, have got everything at their fingertips there, and at the fingertips, what they've got is they've got the biggest brands on earth who know how to tap into what they're tuning into, be that, PS5 or YouTube or content or TikTok or whatever. And that generation, in many ways, is probably ahead of the curve when it comes to content as well. Liam, it was a great conversation I had with Kevin McKenna last Friday, where he was speaking about these people who are qualified to work in media, not having a clue how media works. And then you've got kids with a YouTube channel or a TikTok channel who's absolutely smashing it, and there's an instinct there. And what I've noticed is that the bigger brands out there who are in bigger leagues are already tapping into that. The best example that I can use, Fortnite. Love it or loathe it, Fortnite's a thing. And what they did, they've actually got kids into Snoop Dogg and Eminem, who otherwise would never have a clue who they two guys were, through skins and worlds and launches, etc., etc., etc. And there's other ways of doing it. Getting influencers to buy into your football club. Next thing you know, kids are running about the streets of Fife with Inter Miami shirts on. I mean, that's bizarre. Yeah. So you need to look at every way to tap in to the next generation of fan. And a big part of that for me is the ultra fan groups. You look at some of the smaller clubs in Scotland, they're all about 14-year-old ultras, right? Because they want to be part of something, a tribe and a community. And that experience of going to the football is more about that than what's actually happening on the park for a lot of them. So the club need to realise that, in my view, Liam. Do you think they will?
Do I think they will? No. Do I think they should? Absolutely. I think that, like you say, for all football teams, this is part of it's a social movement now.
Yes.
It's like you say, the technology now means that we have access to information like we never had before, which also means people are, shall we say, empowered like never before to take collective action, whether it be a display at a football match or a political protest. I mean, we talked about the working class of Germany a minute ago. They have mobilized fantastically against the far right in Germany in the last couple of weeks. The protests they've been putting together have been phenomenal. And it's social media that leads it, and it is the interconnectivity of social groups that leads it. And we have a very big social group in football ultras. And, like we say, unfortunately, the relationship between St. Pauli and Celtic isn't there anymore. But there are other clubs which I'm sure we will build relationships with in the future. And maybe the St. Pauli thing can be worked out one day. I hope so. I sincerely hope that whole Middle East thing is worked out as soon as possible. Because if anybody needs a lucky break, by God, it's the Palestinians. But oh God, I'm getting off topic here. But anyway, my point is that it's there. It's a huge part of what's going on now, and the club really need to get with the program, because it's there whether you like it or no. So you might as well get involved with it and benefit from it.
Yeah. And like you say, and you're right, it's a social movement. So you've got to embrace it. You've got to engage with them. And the only way of, if you like, getting them to stop doing the stuff that is getting the club into trouble is by embracing it. Because the more you cut them out from the discussion, Liam, the more they will rebel against it. Because you are then seen as being the establishment and the authority. And they will definitely rebel against that. It's the very meaning of being that wee community and that tribe, is to be rebellious and to be different and to be alternative and to have a community spirit that not only improves the atmosphere in the ground, but also benefits many charities all the year round. And we should never forget that as well. Now, Alpha 0964, good shout. No Old Firm, lest they forget. Yes, and that takes us right up to the Celtic financials, right? And where we currently sit. 2 weeks ago, I spoke to David Lowe. If you want to talk about financials in Celtic, David Lowe's the man to speak to. I don't think there'll be many people arguing that particular statement, Liam. And it was a very interesting, as it always is with David, a very interesting hour spent. Celtic yesterday announced a pre-tax profit of £43.9 million with £65.4 million in their bank. We smashed our transfer record twice in the period. And, when you think about it as well, Liam, my big takeaway from it, a lot of people are saying, look, Celtic look as though they're priming for some kind of sale. And I don't mean a sale of a football club, but perhaps one of the major shareholders might be looking to sell their share. That is the chat around the campfire of people in the know when it comes to financials, of which I am not one of them. But this, one thing I took away from it, as well as the Kieran Tierney announcement, under the radar announcement, was this is the third year in a row that we've been in the Champions League groups. Now, you can look at the Ange Postecoglou one, and it gave us that bit of hope where it was cavalier, and we thought we can go toe-to-toe with Real Madrid and all this kind of stuff, and that was just typical Ange. Then you looked at the campaign under Brendan, which it was like so many near misses, so many things didn't go our way, and there was a couple of wee glimmers of hope in there. And then this campaign, and you're thinking, wow, we are progressing. We're progressed out of this new structure, and we've got the knockout, and we're going to be buzzing tomorrow night when it comes. But that must continue, Liam, for us to have that kind of dominance, if you like, in terms of the financials of Scottish football. We'll always be bigger. We'll always have more money. We've got a bigger stadium, more fans, a global brand, all this stuff, right? But in terms for us to progress, Champions League is becoming more and more at the forefront of that, if you ask me. And yeah, the Champions League groups are great. This season's been a ride. It's been tremendous. But progression, I think, also hinges on it when you're looking at the financials, Liam. But Celtic will probably always have to punch that wee bit above to be where we are right now in the Champions League. But in order to punch that wee bit above, you need to go out and buy guys like Engels and Ida and Trusty. I mean, there you go. There's the crux of 30 million quid. That's where Celtic need to be to buy 3 players now.
Yeah, that's the reality. If we're getting this kind of money in, that's the kind of money that needs to be invested to stay at that level. Yeah. Because that is what teams of a similar, shall we say, a similar status to Celtic at the moment, big teams in small leagues are having to do. You look at clubs like Ajax, Bruges, Red Bull Salzburg. These are all clubs who are decent sized clubs, but they're in relatively smaller leagues, and they're having to spend big money now just to keep up with the top 5 leagues. And I think it's unhealthy for football in general, but it is the financial reality now that we need to be spending at that level to compete at that level. Because the other thing as well with this Champions League, let's not forget, this is just papering over the cracks. This new structure, this is a precursor to a European League. That's the reality of it.
Absolutely.
Within 5 to 10 years, it's just going to be a straight up European league. You're going to have your domestic football on a Saturday, your European football on a Wednesday. That's the way it's going to go. And I think what you might have as well, and this is another discussion for another time, but what you might have in the fullness of time is a shift towards, instead of substitutes, maybe the sort of American football, ice hockey idea of a 25-man squad and you rotate them in and out throughout the game.
Well, I love
that's
that
what's
idea.
going to have to happen for the sake of the health of the players.
Yeah.
Playing 3 games a week is going to become the norm.
It's going to become the norm, Liam, and it opens up that discussion. That's a tremendous idea of being able to rotate the players in game. It also opens up a discussion that we touched on when speaking to David Lowe, and that was in relation to Celtic having, if you like, 2 teams. You've got a European team, right? And then you've got your domestic team. And the way around that is to have a development of players, and in many, many ways, I've spoken about this time and time again. We spoke obviously about the idea of Bayern Wimbledon Football Club in 1998, rebranding it as Celtic and getting your way into English football that way. If you've not heard the story, go and watch it. It was David Lowe last Friday. Intriguing. A lot of people were dead against it, but we were looking for every single way possible to get into the riches of another league. But you would continue to have a team in the Scottish League that developed your players, Liam. And we do have 2 teams in the pyramid of Scottish football right now. The problem being, Scottish football will not allow the second team, the B team, to progress. So there's no onus put on it. There's no investment put in it. It needs to be a hybrid team of experience and youth. And it needs to be a team that if you win the league, you get promoted up to the second tier. Like, you look at where Arnie Engels cut his teeth. It was in Bruges' second team, who were in the second tier of that particular structure, that pyramid. And he was able to play enough games there that attracted Augsburg, and he went over there and obviously developed further. But in order for us to develop young footballers, I think that is an absolute must. But I do like the idea of the rotational system. I'm also going to get, in the last 3 minutes of the show, your predicted 11, please, Liam, for tomorrow night. Give me your predicted 11.
Right. Okay. So obviously Kasper Schmeichel in goals, assuming that he's fit. I would go Alistair Johnston at right back, centre back pairing of CCV and Trusty. Left back, I think you go with Greg Taylor. Not to say that there's anything wrong with Schlupp. He's looked good so far, but Taylor has been the man in Europe so far this season, and that, for as long as he's a Celtic player, that should still be the case, I think. Midfield, I would go obviously Callum McGregor, Engels, and Hatate. And then up front, you've got Kuhn, Ida, and Dyson. And like I said, after a period of time in the second half, you move Dyson into the middle, you bring on Jota. And I think also I could see Luke McCowan playing a part in the midfield as well, because he was superb at the weekend. And he is ready, I think, to step up onto a European stage and do something special.
Imagine that, going for Celtic fan to playing Bayern Munich in the playoff of the Champions League. Phenomenal. Anything can happen in this world, ladies and gents. A Kaiser likes to be a rebel. The authorities hate it, Kaiser. The authorities hate it if you rebel against the mainstream narrative, because obviously it's all about controlling the populace. So keep rebelling, my man, keep rebelling. Monty, the jungle was just a great place. I miss it still. I always remember, Monty, going to the games for years before being allowed in the jungle. And I don't know if it was through the El Dorado or the Fat 69 or whatever my dad was on that day, because we were walking up to the game and somebody shouted him over, Liam, from across the road that he used to work with back in the day. And they shared a swally on the side of the street before we went into the stadium, and he took me in to the jungle for the first time, and it was a New Year's Day game against Rangers. I mean, what an introduction.
Fun fact, you can still do that in Japan. I was walking home today and there was a guy sitting at a park bench just taking a swallow out of a bottle. Public drinking is still very much a thing here.
It was glorious. It was glorious. And it was absolutely teeming down with rain that day. People will remember in the comments the game I'm talking about, right? It was a New Year's Day game. Paul McStay got kicked in the face, right? And he left the park for what seemed like ages. I'll need to watch the game back. And for the rest of his career to this day, he's got a big scar under his eye. He got kicked in the face. Can't remember who kicked him. We got beat 3-1 that day. But after going a goal down, Tony Mowbray scored the equaliser with a header. And he jumps the billboards and goes to the fans behind the goal. And we're in the jungle going absolutely berserk. And what I remember, though, we were all soaking wet, right? And we went into the jungle, and the body heat, Liam, the body heat of being in the jungle, and then the steam coming off the bodies. And it was stinking, by the way. It's absolutely humming. And the steam coming off the bodies. And I remember saying to my old man, this is it. This is what it's there was no sexiness to it whatsoever. No. But by God, you loved it. You absolutely loved it. Frastone. Any plans for Acsom events in Belfast? Yes, ongoing at the moment, It's all logistics at the moment, but we are hoping to come over very, very soon, and we'll keep you informed of that. And what I would say is that there's a link underneath this video to acsom.net, which is our All Singing, All Dancing website. And on that website, there's a live events tab where all our upcoming events are on there, and the links to the tickets are in there. We've also got a blog, and Liam is going to be managing that blog with numerous articles in the coming weeks and months. And we've got a shop, and we've got everything else you can imagine on our website, and all the links to wherever we are. So thanks for bringing it up. Our next event, in actual fact, is this big fella here. It's Johan Mjällby, who played for Celtic in a European final. Not many players have done that. And he's going to be joining us on the 27th of February at Gracie's. The tickets are £15 and can be purchased on the link underneath this video. If you've not been to an Acsom night before, and I know that Liam's old fella and brother have been, because I spoke to them. If you've not been to an Acsom night before, come along and say hello and get involved. We'll stick you on the mailing list, and we'll keep you informed as well, because that's what it's all about. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Liam, we could go on. I feel like we're just getting started, and that is going to be a theme of future Acsom broadcasts. We're not going to cut it short at an hour. It is going to run longer. You can come and go as you please throughout the period, but we are increasing the quality and the duration. If you enjoy what we do, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Come along and see us at one of the gigs, and read Liam's blogs when they start dropping on the page. Thanks for getting involved, and thanks for supporting a Celtic state of mind.